Okay there, Yotam. Here goes the next chapter, number 20. Now I must tell you quickly about everything that happened while Haroon was away in the old zone. Princess Batshit Chatterjee, you will remember, was being held prisoner in the topmost room of the topmost tower of the citadel. Citadel is like a tower of Chup, the huge castle built entirely of black ice, which loomed over Chup City like an enormous pterodactyl or giant dinosaur. So it was to Chup City what the Guppy army came. It was to Chup City that the Guppy army came, with General Kitab, Prince Bolo, and Mudra, the shadow warrior, at its head. Chup City was in the deep heart of the perpetual darkness, and the air was so cold it would freeze into icicles on people's noses and hang there until it was broken off. For this reason, I guess they must have had running noses, from stuff to freeze. For this reason, the Chupwalas who lived there wore little round nose warmers that gave them the look of circus clowns, like little round balls on their nose. Except that the nose warmers were black. Red nose warmers were issued to the pages of Gup as they marched into the darkness. Really, this is beginning to look like a war between clowns, thought Rashid, the storyteller, as he put on his false red nose. Prince Bolo, who found the things distinctly undignified, knew that a frozen icicle dangling nose would even be worse. So he sulked, like that, terribly, but stuck his nose warmer on as well. Then there were the helmets. The pages of Gup had been given the oddest headgear Rashid had ever seen, by courtesy of the walrus and egghead back at P2C2E house. Around the rim of each helmet was a sort of hatband that lit up brightly when the helmet was worn. This made the pages of Gup look rather like a regiment of angels or saints, because they all had shining halos around their heads. The combined wattage, that's electricity power, of all these halos would just about enable the Guppies to see their opponents, even in the perpetual darkness, while the Chupwalas, even with their fashionable wraparound dark glasses on, might be somewhat dazzled by the glare. This certainly is state-of-the-art warfare, thought Rashid ironically. Neither army will even be able to see properly during the fight. Outside Chup City lay the battlefield, the wide plain of Bat-Mat Karo, which had little hills at each end, where the rival commanders could pitch their tents and watch the battle's course. General Kitab, Prince Bolo, and Mudra were joined on the Guppy command hill by Rashid the storyteller, who was needed because only he could translate Mudra's gesture language, gesture means moving of the hands, to the others, and a group of pages, including Blabbermouth, to act as messengers and guards. The Guppy commanders, all looking slightly silly in their red noses, sat down to a light pre-battle dinner in their tent. And while they were eating, a Chupwala rode up to meet them, a little clerk-looking fellow, wearing on his hooded cloak the sign of the zipped lips, and carrying a white flag of truce. When people want to make peace, they come with a white flag to say, let's talk. Well, Chupwalla, said Prince Bolo dashingly and rather foolishly, what's your business? My, he added, impolitely. What a measly, weaselly, sniveling, driveling sort of fellow you are. Spots and fogs, Bolo, boomed General Kitab. That's no way to address an ambassador who comes under a white flag. An ambassador is someone who represents a group or a country. The ambassador gave an evil little grin of unconcern and then spoke. The High Cultmaster, Katam Shud, has granted me special release for my vows of silence so that this message may be delivered. He said in a low, hissing voice, he sends you greetings and informs you that you are all trespassing on the sacred soil of Chup. He will neither negotiate with you nor give up your spying, nosy Parker of a batsheet. And oh, but she's noisy too, the ambassador added, clearly speaking for himself now. She torments our ears with her songs, and for her nose, her teeth. There's no need to go into that, interrupted General Kitab. Drat it all. We aren't interested in your opinions. Complete your confounded message. The Chippewa ambassador cleared his throat. Katam Shud therefore warns you that unless you retreat at once, your illegal invasion will be punished by annihilation, which means they're going to wipe them out. And Prince Bolo of Gup will be brought in chains to the citadel. I guess the citadel is like a castle, but I think a castle where an army stays, so that he may personally witness the sewing up of Batshit Chatterjee's noisy, whiny, annoying mouth. Knave, scoundrel, rapscallion, bounder, rogue, shouted Prince Bolo. I should cut off your ears and have them fried with a little butter and garlic and served to our hounds, our dogs. However, continued the Chuppewa ambassador, ignoring Bolo's outburst completely, before your utter defeat, I am commanded to entertain you for a moment, if you permit. I am, if I may immodestly means very conceited, very much filled with himself, saith, the finest juggler in Chup City, and I am ordered to juggle if you should so wish for your delight. Blabbermouth, who was standing behind Prince Bolo's chair, here burst out, don't trust him, it's a trick. General Kitab, with his love of argument, seemed perfectly willing to discuss this possibility. But Bolo waved the royal arm and cried, silence, page, the rules of chivalry means the rules of polite behavior, even in war, demand our acceptance. And to the Chuppewa ambassador he said, as haughtily, with such pride as he could manage, fellow, we will see you juggle. I think it's a mistake. The ambassador began his performance. From the depth of his cloak, he produced a bewildering variety of objects. Ebony balls. Ebony is a very dark, hard wood. 9 pins. Those are the things that people stand up and they knock down with a ball in bowling. Jade statuettes. Jade is a green stone. Porcelain teacups. Porcelain is something that's been baked in an oven. You know, very fine china, it's called. Cups. Live terrapins. A terrapin is a kind of turtle. Lighted cigarettes and hats, and flung them into the air in mesmerizing hoops and whirls. The faster he juggled, the more complicated the juggling became, and his audience was so completely hypnotized by his skill that only one person at a time saw the moment in which one extra object was added to the flying parade, a little heavy rectangular box out of which produced a slow, short, burning fuse. Fuse is something you light for a bomb. "Will you, for Pete's sake, look out!" yelled Blabbermouth, rushing forward and sending Prince Bolo and his chair flying sideways. "The guy's got a live bomb!" So she had reached the Chapala ambassador in 2 strides. Using her sharp eye and every ounce of her own juggling skills, she plucked the bomb right out of the rising, falling, dancing array of objects in the air. Other pages seized the chapwala, and statuettes and teacups and teramits and terrapins all plummeted to the ground. But Blabbermouth was rushing to the edge of the command hill as fast as her legs would carry her. And when she reached the edge, she threw the bomb away down the hillside, where it exploded in an enormous, but now harmless, ball of glowing black flames. The helmet had fallen from her head. Her long hair cascaded is like a waterfall, cascaded around her shoulders for all to see. Bolo, the general, Mudra, and Rashid rushed out of the tent when they heard the explosion. Blabbermouth was out of breath, but grinning happily. "So we just about got that in time," she said. "I warned you. What a creep that Chapwala was. He was ready to commit suicide, to get blown up along with us. I told you it was a trick. He's like a terrorist." Prince Bolo, who didn't like his pages to say, "I told you so," snapped back, "What's this, Blabbermouth? Are you a girl?" "You noticed, sire," said Blabbermouth, because he saw her hair. "No point pretending any more." "You tricked us," said Bolo, blushing. "You tricked me." Blabbermouth was outraged by Bolo's ingratitude. He wasn't grateful. "Tricking you isn't exactly difficult. Excuse me," she cried. "Jugglers can do it. Why not girls?" Bolo went red in the face behind his red nose warmer. "You're fired," he shouted at the top of his voice. "Bolo, give it up," began General Kitab. "Oh, no, I'm not," Blabbermouth shouted. "Mister, I quit." Mudra, the shadow warrior, had been observing these goings-on with an utterly inscrutable, which means you can't read it, expression on his green face. Now, however, his hands began to move, his legs to adopt eloquent, that's fancy, positions. His facial muscles began to ripple and twitch. Rashid translated, "We must not quarrel when the battle is about to begin. If Prince Bolo has no further need of so courageous a page, then perhaps Miss Blabbermouth would care to work for me." At which Prince Bolo of Gup looked crestfallen, meaning, like he doesn't feel so good, and ashamed. And Miss Blabbermouth looked exceptionally pleased. The battle was joined at last. Rashid Khalifa, watching the action from the Guppy command hill, was very much afraid that the pages of Gup would be beaten badly. Torn up would be the right term for pages, I suppose, because they're made of paper. He reflected, or perhaps burned. His sudden capacity for bloodthirsty thoughts amazed him. I suppose war makes people crude. Crude is like rough, undeveloped, he told himself. The black-nosed Chapwala army, whose menacing silence hung over it like a fog, looked too frightening to lose. Meanwhile, the Guppies were still busily arguing over every little detail. Ooh, excuse me. Every order sent down from the command hill had to be debated fully, with all its pros and cons, that means for and against, even if it came from General Kitab himself. How was it possible to fight a battle with all this chatter and natter? Rashid wondered, perplexed, confused. But then the armies rushed at each other, and Rashid saw to his great surprise that the Chapwala were quite unable to resist the Guppies. The pages of Gup, now that they had talked through everything so fully, fought hard, remained united, supported each other when required to do so, and in general looked like a force with a common purpose. All those arguments and debates, all that openness had created powerful bonds of fellowship between them. That's like the Israeli army, the IDF. The Chapwalas, on the other hand, turned out to be a disunited rabble, just as Mudra, the shadow warrior, had predicted. Many of them actually had to fight their own treacherous shadows. As for the rest, well, their vows of silence and their habits of secrecy had made them suspicious and distrustful of each other. They had no faith in their generals either. The upshot is that the Chapwalas did not stand shoulder to shoulder, but betrayed one another, stabbed one another in the back, mutinied, that means rebelled against the leaders, hid, deserted, meaning they ran away, and after the shortest clash imaginable, simply threw down all their weapons and ran away. That's the end of this chapter. That's number 20. See you soon. Bye-bye.